Welcome back, everybody, to Live Your Dream. It's about you. And I'm so excited to introduce my next guest, which is Tom Brisson. And he is a retired journalist and a paranormal enthusiast. And I just love that. So I guess we'll start first with maybe the journalist part, and then we'll get into the other part. And maybe tell us how you got started, whatever it is that you want to talk about.
You know, it's interesting. The journalism is something that happened almost by accident. I'd always had, decent verbal skills when I was a little kid. My parents would have said my verbal skills were too good most of the time. But when I got in through high school, I actually wanted to take a cooking class that was closed, but they said, well, you can go on the school newspaper. So I said, oh, okay.
Wow.
And so, here I am 40 years later, having worked in journalism, specifically newspapers, for a long, long time. And I've been retired for a couple of years. But, the interesting thing is everybody talks now about following your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not all of us have an overriding passion. But what you should do is follow your curiosity, perhaps. And it will lead you to things and to situations that you never expected to find yourself in, that might work out really okay. And so that's what I did. I followed a journalism career, and it's led me into some other interesting types of things as well. So.
But I love the way you say that, because I know for me, over the years, I didn't exactly know what my life purpose was or what I wanted to do. All I knew is I love people, I love to talk, I love to support people, and people are drawn to me, and I'm drawn to them. And it's just how everything, my law career, my real estate career, my creative side, the way this show came about. Now, I think I was sharing with you earlier, I'm incorporating financial services into my real estate business, and everything, it just all works together, and it's all about supporting people and helping people.
Okay.
And it's like you said, it's like maybe you don't know necessarily your passion, but it kind of like develops as your life goes.
Yeah. So do you find that yourself following a particular direction of your own heart? Is that what you're telling us?
Exactly. Or? I get like a sense. I mean, it's just when I feel a strong nudge to do something. Yeah. I mean, like even example would be with the show.
Right.
I just real briefly, I had been on, for my real estate business, I had been on different shows here on Central Valley Talk. Yes. And Mike Briggs, the owner of Central Valley Talk, had asked me if I wanted to do my own show, and I'm like, I don't have time, whatever, and all this stuff. And then it turned out it all evolved such that I'd be able to do it, and it just literally just popped into my head. All the different people and shows I've been on is what I liked and what worked, and it was when somebody supports what I'm about and lets me get out my message. So I came up with Live Your Dream, it's about you. And just real quick, I want to let everybody know that anybody who wants to come on the show to talk about an interest, a passion, a fundraiser, a nonprofit, a business, I've had love of animals on here, because animals, obviously by my backdrop, are near and dear to my heart. Veterans, I'm very patriotic, or just anything. I'm here to support people and to spread love and light. And just the way I've met different people, just like I met you. I mean, I just met you, was it Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday night.
Yeah, at a social event. And I started talking to him. I'm like, oh my God, you need to come on my show to talk about your life, your experience, inspire other people, as well as I want to promote and celebrate you. So I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about you.
Like you, I have met few people that my sense was that they weren't called to greatness in some way. Our problem is that we frequently don't recognize the greatness that we're called to. Your greatness might not be to be somebody who's world famous, but I guarantee you there is a role that only you can fulfill because of your unique combination of personality characteristics and your history and even genetics that make you a unique individual and able to speak to other people in a way that nobody else can. And so if we lose that greatness, whether it's you or it's somebody listening to us today, there's nobody else who can fill that spot. And so it's very important to us to listen carefully to your own heart, sometimes to what other people are saying to you, to find your path and to follow where it's leading you at the time. But I know that it's difficult to figure this out, especially for younger people. But it comes with experience and with a growing confidence in yourself, and just that's the direction I need to go in. That's what I should be doing.
And wouldn't you agree that when you feel it in your gut,
Yeah.
that's usually the right way? Because I
Yeah.
know I've forced myself to do things before. I've had jobs I didn't want to do or whatever. I felt like my soul was suffering.
Right.
And when sometimes I'm like, it's fate. I don't know where this is going, but I have to do this.
Yeah,
That's all I know.
Especially with our vocations, you don't want to become too good at something you hate.
Right.
Because then you're trapped into a money thing for doing something that you don't care about. And some people get stuck that way for years and years and years and years. And, I think I'd rather be poor and do something I really love. But if you do something you hate and all you've got is money, it's not going to be enough. I don't care how much it is.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And then you say, but you're rich in spirit. And I mean,
Yes.
people a lot of times use the example of Steve Jobs. Obviously he was a very successful man, but on his deathbed, what was he talking about? What was important? Whatever was near and dear to his heart.
Yeah. Well, our culture is so advertising driven and so driven towards pushing people towards a really two-dimensional understanding of success, and it's not enough for a human being to live that way. I don't like to say that everybody should be a starving artist, but everybody should at least make an attempt to make art, to do something creative, whether it's writing or painting or sculpture or music. Any of those things that enrich our lives and that make it worthwhile to be a human being.
Oh, I so agree with you. And to me, like art form wise, music is my favorite.
Yes.
It just
Yeah.
feeds the soul on so many levels. And I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times people say that, a starving artist. But number one, they're living their passion, their dream, with their heart and soul. And then number two, as an example, I've had Dwayne Andre on here before, and he started Team Amen, which stands for Artist, Musician, Entrepreneurial Network, and talking about all that coming together and being able to network and make money to be able to support yourself and promote your art and everything. Your art, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm talking about in the general sense, music, all of
Sure.
that falls underneath
Sure.
it. And just a quick plug on that, at Cafe 210 in Visalia on Center, on the first and the third Friday of the month, we have the Team Amen event. And I get involved with that too, because I'm part of that group as well. And it's a karaoke event. It's a lot of fun, and we just all network and we just let our spirit come alive through music. And it's just an incredible event. And by the way, you're invited, and so is Nick, and anybody else who's watching who wants to come. It's a great thing. But I just wanted to throw that in there, because it's like what you said, the starving
Yeah.
artist thing. It's
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to be that way. We can do it.
Well,
we can do it.
I think this is how people kind of learn to feel their way through, by trying different things. And it may surprise you that you're singing it in church or karaoke, and somebody says, "Hey, you've got a nice voice," and so you follow that and see what it develops into, or I've heard your voice. You should really focus on dance, or in my case, writing, or something like that. And that's useful advice as well. So, but when I started as a journalist, right out of Fresno State, I served an internship at a newspaper, and a small paper here in the Valley, and the first thing they make young reporters do is chase sirens all over the place. So I was covering police and fire and those kinds of things. And then as I got a little older, I started covering religion and ethics at another regional paper here in the Valley. And that put me in touch with some really interesting people, including, and that's kind of where my interest in the paranormal comes. And I always say enthusiast because I don't think there are any experts on this field. There's no place to go to study to get a degree, and if you could, it would be worthless, pretty much. You know, you can.
Well, because things are changing, and right. And
there are so many aspects of this, and it doesn't lend itself to what we normally consider scientific research. But you know, it's interesting. Nonetheless, people have these experiences, and I'm thinking about a University of Chicago study that was done about 20 years ago through their New Opinion Research Center that said that all kinds of things about how people experience people that we consider dead, relatives and people that they loved who somehow managed to make their presence known. And apparently this is an experience that's very, very widespread across cultures, which is important, and also across time, which is also important. There's no evidence that I can see that living in a scientific age, and of course we're the result of the Enlightenment and the scientific method, and yet people continue to experience these things. Why is that? And that's what I'm interested in, is the why, and what is the evidence for what people say they're experiencing. And I've met people who are very qualified academics who also study this, and you know, all of the evidence, or much of it, is anecdotal. Admittedly, it's based on people's experience, but it's so widespread that you have to wonder if there's something incomplete or something that we're just not able to do yet about how scientific evidence is gathered, and if in the future we might be able to be more scientific about collecting this information, presenting it. So I know that you have an interest in this.
oh yes, I do.
field as well.
I do very much so.
So you know, and I think there's a big interest here in the valley, and there is a lot of interest in cable television. Ghost Hunters is the one that comes up all the time, and there are also any number of amateur ghost hunting groups that have sprung up around the country, and so there is a media interest in this that is a reflection of what's already going on in our society. People are going in new directions, and I know I realize that people say, well, what it's testimony to is a shocking lack of scientific education in our community. Well, there is that, but there's also people's experience, and there are some people who are extremely bright and experienced and well educated who have also had these things happen to them, and some won't talk about it because their colleagues will run them out of town.
Right. Or their religious upbringing, you know, and
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there are a lot of different factors.
Right. Well, there is a fear of what traditional religious groups call the occult.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it, I think, is probably justified, but some of it is counterproductive if the result is to tamp down people's natural curiosity in these kinds of experiences, which is too bad. And you know, you've experienced that sort of thing, and so have I. I have talked to family members who have a long experience with these kinds, seeing things,
Mm-hmm.
and but they don't talk about it because you know the results are predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, if your passion, or I don't even like to call it that, your curiosity draws you in this direction, follow it. If your curiosity draws you in the direction of writing, follow it. You may end up with, even if it's something you don't get paid for, an avocation that will give you joy for the rest of your life. And you know, what else is there? I mean, unless you're willing to spend the rest of your life sitting around watching game shows and reality television, you know, for Pete's sake, don't do that. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I shared, my business is in real estate, and now I've got this financial services thing that I do, and this show is It's just, to me, I call it a hobby because I
Right.
don't. It's about, like I said, spreading love and light and supporting other people. This is not how I make my living, but it's like you said. And what I find very ironic is, I don't know if I told you this, but my name means joy. It's Italian spelling, but it comes from the Latin "laetitia," which means joy and gladness.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, to me, it's kind of like, okay, I was already given the name, I might as well
might
do
as
it,
well
right?
Grow into it.
And then what you were saying about, people being afraid of the occult or the whole concept or whatever. And again, in my mind, I'm thinking it's about fear
Yes.
or love.
Yes.
I mean, you could say fear or faith, but still faith is still encompasses love. And when we get, a lot of religion, I was brought up, obviously being Italian, my parents were immigrants. I was brought up Catholic, very strict and very, traditional. But it just never really totally sat right with me. And to me, I could always see the global picture of how all the religions are interact. It's spirit, it's the universe. We're all one. And just the whole concept of it. And it's always was like fear-based. You don't do this, you don't do this. And a lot of it was from, they care. Like my parents cared, so they tried to instill fear in me. But what instead it did was it kept me from becoming who I needed to be and letting this gift come out of me. And, it's like to be afraid of people instead of love people. And it's just, so when you say that, that's what comes into mind, the fear-based, oh, that's a cult. Something we don't understand, oh, that's bad.
Right.
Instead of like curiosity, checking into it. What is it about?
That's central to being human beings. Even higher primates have that capacity to check out things that are unfamiliar to them. Cats do that. As they say, curiosity killed the cat, but not very often.
Right, especially with their 9 lives, right?
I have a question, a real estate question. Now, somebody told me years ago that if there is a death in a home, that you're required to divulge that to people within for a certain period of time after it takes place.
That's correct. And it also depends. It depends on the state, of course,
Yeah.
and then it depends on the nature of the death. Like not only the time frame. Like let's say the death occurred 10 years ago. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that's outside of the requirement. But it also depends on whether it was a violent death or
I
whether,
see.
because if it's obviously like a murder or something, that's even more pressing.
Interesting.
Because it's important for somebody to know that. It might make, especially like a murder, something that's violent, it might make, I won't say it might, it will make a big difference to most people.
Yeah.
Because, especially people like us who believe in,
Yeah.
the spirits and the paranormal, that something, could affect them. But
this happened to a close relative of mine who got into a home that he couldn't keep his electric wristwatches running no matter how often he replaced the batteries.
wow.
And his spouse reported hearing whispers around the house, and she could never nail down the source of this sort of thing. And I think, well, I wonder what would happen if they'd had some people who were interested and had some experience in this field come in to look around.
Right.
And it had turned out that a young man had. It wasn't a violent death, but it was a very tragic death in part of the house. And I think that that may not be as common anymore. I know a generation or two ago, most people died at home, not in hospitals or convalescent homes, and maybe that was much more common than it is today. But there were some very odd things going on in that house that seemed to be beyond explanations.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Did they end up selling the house, or do you know the history?
Well, they rented it from a woman who later told them what was going on.
Oh, I
Apparently
see.
she had a son who had passed away from AIDS in
okay.
the back bedroom of the house, and she was very judgmental about the way he died, and felt like God was punishing him, and so didn't want to tell anybody that she was renting the house to.
Oh, that's too bad.
And my nephew, who had actually stayed in the room where the young man had passed away, said that he would sometimes dream about someone bending over him as he slept and speaking to him.
Wow.
That appeared to be a a young man.
So it was a very peaceful entity that was.
Yeah, I don't
Despite his death.
think it was threatening. Yeah, yeah, but it certainly wasn't good for the emotional feeling of the house. Was one of depression and sadness.
Well, that makes sense.
And that was part of that. And I suspect it could be considered a haunting, not having direct experience with it. But I think there's evidence that would lead in that direction. So.
And that totally, when you said about the sadness and everything, I mean, it's not only, obviously it was a young individual who passed away from a terrible illness, and also too, but the circumstances surrounding it,
Right.
about the mother not accepting him and
Yes.
being embarrassed by it,
Yes.
And that itself, it just gives me goosebumps, because I could just see the pain keeping the spirit still there, because it's
Right.
almost like not fulfilling, or I don't know how the word I'm trying to use at the moment, but I mean, that again, it's about fear, and it's instead of loving the individual for who he was.
Fear and love.
Yes, exactly.
It's the either-or thing.
I totally agree.
Fear becomes hatred, which is the opposite. Well, maybe indifference is the opposite of love. Maybe that's a form of hatred. I don't know. But there was another case in Fresno that I was directly. I gained knowledge of this through my job as a newspaper reporter. And I was covering a story on real hauntings in the Fresno area. And I happened to visit a home of a young woman and her husband, and I think they had 2 young children, and some crazy things going on. And I visited the house, and the quality of the light in there was visibly different. You just walked through the front door and you knew something was off.
Wow.
And they had what would be considered poltergeist experiences in their home. They would have a door closed to a room and hear furniture being thrown around in there.
Wow.
They'd open the door, and everything was fine. And the history of the place was, it was in a rundown section of town. It had been used as a place for people to use crack, and there had been at least one death take place in there, and there was part of the home where there was this overwhelming sense of sadness, and then there at times it was a sense of fear. Another time they had handprints appear by themselves on their windows that were just giant, larger than if a human being were playing for the NBA, he wouldn't have hands this big.
Wow.
And it was just really, really odd. So, there are things that happen to people like this that seems to defy explanation. So.
Yeah, all of that's just so fascinating. I would love to hear more.
Yeah.
We do kind of have to wrap up, though.
Of course, yeah.
But I would like to have you come back on, at a later date. Maybe we can, I don't know, we'll kind of figure something out.
Yeah.
Maybe I can have other people who are involved in paranormal or psychic or something like that, or we'll figure it out.
Sure.
But I did want to say, if in case somebody, if they wanted to reach out to you to talk to you more about it, do you want them to look you up on Facebook? Do you want them to call centralvalleytalk.com? Or do you...
I think if they call Central Valley Talk, that would be a good idea. And,
Okay.
You can pass on my contact information.
Okay.
If they don't seem crazy. Or not as crazy as I am.
Of course, I was going to say that puts a lot of strain on them. Or maybe, you know what, if they contacted centralvalleytalk.com or myself directly,
Yes.
and then that way I can get you in contact with them. Because I know this is not, it's like you said, you're an enthusiast. It's not a business that you do. So I totally understand why you wouldn't want to put your contact information on there.
I have been involved in helping people if they think they have negative personalities that don't have skin hanging around in their home, and I could probably advise them or put them in touch with somebody who can.
Okay.
So that's a possibility too.
So maybe that's a good idea to have maybe somebody contact, I don't know if Robert can put on the info. I guess not, because we're kind of in the middle of something. We're getting towards the end. But anyway, it's LR pingitori@gmail.com, and it's PINGITORE. That's my contact information. Or you can call me 559-281-4568, or centralvalleytalk.com, and they can, and I can get you contact or get Tom in contact with you or whatever. So, but definitely you'll be on the show again, and we'll have more discussions.
Okay, great.
And so we're quickly going to go to a commercial break, and then we'll either put in, because like I said, I only have 2 guests today, so either we'll put in another clip or I'll come back on or something. But please do stay tuned, because every minute's important. And again, thank you for allowing me to be of service, and live your dream. It's about you.